Hi guys, I'm Dimension Jumper and today I'll be reviewing the Final Fantasy VII Remake, which was released back in March of 2020 and is of course a remake of the original 1997 game, and this was also released on the PlayStation 4. So the main story of the Final Fantasy VII Remake is that this mercenary called Cloud is hired by these eco-terrorists called Avalanche, and basically what Avalanche does is basically what they're trying to do is trying to save the planet from this this organized big sort of organization, and this organization is basically draining the planet dry of all its resources, and it's basically Avalanche's job to basically destroy these massive reactors, and they hire Cloud to help them blow up one of the reactors. And along the way, Cloud meets a variety of characters like Tifa, his old friend, Barrett, who's like sort of leader of his part of Avalanche, Jessie, who's sort of like the mechanical person, like because she creates bombs and stuff like that. Aerith, who's basically this sort of who's this person who can see these sort of ghost things, which I'll talk about later, and she also has this sort of like power within her, and Cloud meets a variety of other characters throughout the game, and what I like about this game is that it's like a lot update. It's like a massive it's basically a massive improvement from the original game back in 1997, because with the original Final Fantasy VII, a lot of the graphics were quite blocky. Because if you look at the graphics from then and the ones now, you can kind of see that the graphics are a lot improved, and I feel like that's really cool. And basically, I think that's like really well done. And I think the graphics in the remake, mainly because they look more polished, and I think that they run a lot smoother than in the original. Because I feel like in the original, the whenever someone moved, it felt a bit stiff from time to time from what I've seen. But I think with the remake, I feel like everything moves well whenever you're in a cutscene, or whether you're fighting against certain enemies, or whenever you're just walking about. And what I like about this game is that this is split into chapters. So I believe there are around 17 or 18 chapters in the entire game, and they all take about around an hour or so. I think, I'm not 100% sure, so don't quote me on that, but I would say that each chapter takes about roughly around half an hour to an hour or so. And in this game you can choose from different modes, so like easy, normal and hard, and those are like the difficulties that you can play through, and you can basically just feel how the game is, like depending on which mode you're playing through. And the combat itself is really interesting, because with the combat, whenever you're in a specific battle, whether it's against a boss or just some regular enemies, you can switch characters who are in your party at the time. So for example, in the first boss fight, which is basically this giant mechanical scorpion, the people in your party are Cloud and Barrett, and I feel like what I like about this is that you can choose who you want to play as. So for example, for Barrett, for example, if you're playing as Barrett, you can use his machine gun thing that he has on his arm, and if you want to play as Cloud, you can use his Buster Sword. And each character that you play as all have different movesets. So for Cloud, he's got his Buster Sword. For Barrett, he's got his machine gun arm. And then you can also play as several other characters like Tifa and Aerith, and they too have their own different skills and movesets. So for Tifa, for example, she does this sort of martial arts moves, and for Aerith, she can basically heal your party and also do some magic type elemental bursts or something. And I think that's really cool and interesting. And the characters themselves, I feel like, are some of the best characters in any game that I've seen, because I feel like all the interactions that Cloud has with the other characters that you see throughout the game, with Barrett, Tifa, Aerith, Jesse, and a lot of other people, I feel like those are cool interactions, because with Cloud, he's sort of this silent type. Well, he does talk from time to time, but he's like one of those guys that kind of stands in the back and sort of looks at how to solve a particular situation, and then he acts on that instinct. And it's kind of like it's somewhat trying to distance himself, sort of, because there are times where he just doesn't reply to specific people and stuff like that. And now it's time for some gameplay. Now, in the game, there are two kinds of sort of set piece type areas. The first kind of set piece is places like Sector 7, and this is sort of place where you can go to do like side quests or collect potions and stuff like that, and where you can talk to a variety of characters. So, for example, you can talk to the landlady here, or Marl. Yeah.
You from up on high.
So yeah, and I do like these kinds of set pieces, mainly because you can just walk about and just do a bunch of stuff. As I said before, side quests, collecting certain items, or new weapons for your characters, and also you can fight enemies at specific areas of the game, and different parts of the sector. So, for example, for this part of the game in Sector 7, there's a part of the game where you can go to fight, like, bunch of enemies and do some side quests there. And I've got to say, this particular set piece is quite, it seems peaceful, maybe because of all the people here, and they're not really a part of the top, as you can see on the plates, here, all the top plate, because they're not part of this particular part of the plate. They're mainly just below the plate and below all of Midgar, stuff like that. And if you want to change weapons, go to the options menu and basically just choose which is the character. So let's say Cloud, for example, and you want to change his weapons. So let's say, because the weapon I have for Cloud at the moment is Twin Stinger, and I think Twin Stinger, or Twin Stinger. I think it's Twin Stinger. I'm going to say Stinger. I think that's the best weapon in the game for Cloud. I think, because I think that's the last weapon you can get for him. You've got his normal Buster Sword, you've got his Iron Blade, his Natsbat, his Hard Edge, and his Mithril Saber. So if I wanted to choose his, let's say, Buster Sword, change the weapons, and then you can choose which kind of materia you can have for Cloud. So let's say I want to change Time materia. I would go into the materia selections and let's say go for Subversion materia. That would change, but as it is the same kind of colour materia, I might change to a different material. So let's say I go for Elemental. So as you can see, the materias are all different colours. So you've got a blue one, ones here are purple, green and yellow, and the red ones, as I said before, are the monster summon ones, which I feel are quite cool and interesting. And now I'm going to be showing you the second kind of set piece in the game. Now, the second kind of set piece you can do is other ones where you fight particular enemies. So all the enemies vary. For example, you've got Shinra security officers, guys. You've got robots, and each set. I think these are the cool set pieces, mainly because you fight a bunch of enemies. But they do get kind of repetitive after a while, mainly because you're fighting a lot of the same things. but I feel like these type of enemies, like the security officers and the robots you fight, are kind of suitable for the game for which they're set in, because this is sort of like cyberpunk type of game, like sort of like it's got like, you know, robotic guys or enemies or whatever, and yeah, and for like the gameplay option, you've got two types of modes. You've got operator mode and punisher mode, well for Cloud mainly, and each of these characters have them. So I believe for Barrett, he's got this big blast, or like big one-shot blast, which is quite interesting. For Tifa, she can do this like uppercut thing, and for I believe Aerith, she can do this. I can't exactly remember what she does, but I think it's like she takes health, or she absorbs health or something. I can't exactly remember, because I feel like Aerith's triangle attack,
Is he one of us now?
it's probably forgettable. I feel like
what was his name again?
it just to me feels forgettable for me, and personally,
unlike the rest of us.
yeah.
I'm glad to have him.
Yeah. And I do like these cutscenes, because it shows you the interactions between both Cloud and the people he's in, and sometimes you can hear people over talking to themselves. So, for example, Biggs and Jesse, they're talking about Cloud. Yeah, they're talking about Cloud and why he's in the job and stuff like that. And now, yeah, basically that. Yeah, I do really enjoy the cutscenes because of how Cloud talks to each person and how people interact with him in particular.
Come on, nobody do something this crazy just for money.
Because I feel like Cloud is like the sort of character to have, like, basically the sort of character that can, like, he's kind of like, you know, closed-minded. Is that the right word to be saying? Where all the other characters sort of like doubting him, like mainly Barrett and probably some other guys in the game that kind of doubted his skill. But I'm glad that they kind of open up, both Cloud, Barrett and the other characters open up to each other, because they have seen each other's strengths and seen how they both fight within their own things, and I feel like that's actually cool. And now it's time to go back to the review. So, throughout the game, Cloud would get visions of this guy called Sephiroth. Now, Sephiroth is basically this soldier who I think either went missing in action or died. I'm not too sure. It's one of those two things. And Sephiroth is possibly one of the most well-known like characters in all the video games because of what he did. I don't want to spoil too much because I kind of know from watching stuff on YouTube and stuff like that about what Sephiroth has done, but I don't want to spoil that particular part of the game because it's like a real kind of slap to your face that has been shown in video games. But I don't want to spoil it I don't want to spoil it because I feel like people, when it comes to that particular part of the game, I would like people to haven't played Final Fantasy VII to experience that for themselves. And now this game kind of is like it's kind of like going to be in parts for the Final Fantasy VII remake, because this game kind of ends when you beat Sephiroth in this alternate sort of dimension world thing. I think, because I'm not too sure, because at the end of the game, you go through this mystical barrier thing, and you find Midgar, which is basically the main world that you live in, or Cloud and everybody else lives in, and it's basically this giant metal plate thing, which is like, you know, the top side, which is basically where all the sort of wealthy sort of people live, and you've got like the underneath of it, where all like that's where the slums are, and where like all of the poor sort of people live, and where Avalanche lives, where they live in the bottom. And then with this mystical barrier thing, it's basically the same thing as Midgar, or it's like some sort of alternate world or something. I'm not too sure. It's not really explained that much, and that's possibly one of my few things that I kind of criticize about the game, is that there are a lot of things that aren't really explained too much, like the end of the game where you go through that barrier and see Midgar, and there are a few other things that are kind of other things I criticize, like this game is like, from what I've heard from what I've heard, that the remake is like the first few hours of the original, and say, oh, it's not a true remake because it's the first few hours and it doesn't have the entire game. And I can't see where those kind of people are coming from, because when they say like this isn't a true remake because it's not the entire game, I can't see where they're coming from. But I also say, I also like to think that with this remake, I think this is a good remake, because I feel like if it had the entire game, like from the entire original game, I feel like people who are possibly new to Final Fantasy, and this is the first game that they play, they might get a bit too confused about what's happening. And I feel like that having Final Fantasy VII being remade into parts is a very good idea, because it's then people will be able to slowly go into the game and experience certain parts of it without playing the entire game and getting like too confused of what's happening and where you are, or stuff like that. So I really feel like that the remake is somewhat of a good idea of splitting it up into parts. We're not too sure how many parts there are going to be. There could be 3 parts, there could be 5 parts, there could be 8 parts, or 7 parts, because it's Final Fantasy 7. Because if they had 7 parts, I don't know, but there could be 3. I don't know. There could be how many other parts there are within the game. Now, I said that in earlier part of the review that Aerith could see these cloud hooded creature things, and these are basically whispers, and they basically try and I forgot what they do exactly, but it's something to do with like destiny and the future or something like that. Something to do with like future stuff or something like that, and trying to like balance the world or something when one thing is out of place or something. I can't exactly remember. It's really, again, it's one of those things that's not really explained all that much, in my opinion. And also within the game you've got different weapons. So you've got like Cloud's sword, Barrett's machine guns. You've got these sort of knuckle duster things for Tifa, and for Aerith, she's got these staff things. And now with these weapons you can add specific materia to them. Now materia are basically these orb things that contain different sort of element spells, or basically spells, and they're like you can use them in battle. So there's like elemental ones, ones that can help you get more get more attack, more defensive, or stuff like that. And there are ones that can summon these big demon looking things. So there's one, so for the demon materia, there's one that's basically this big fire demon. There's one where I believe there's like ice that can do like ice or water attacks or something. And there's one that's basically this chicken thing. I'm not too sure. I can't exactly remember its name, but it's basically this big chicken thing. And I think there's like some other ones, but I'm not too sure. And I feel like the summoning ones, like the ones with the massive monsters, I feel like that's like the most cool ones, because even though these only happen a few times throughout the game, I feel like that these summonings are really interesting, because in order to use any of their skills, you have to make sure that your bars, these 2 blue bars at the bottom, are full, so you can either use the normal moves, which takes up 1 bar, or use the sort of super duper move, which takes up 2 bars. And I feel like that's really interesting. So, to sum up, well, I really like this game because I feel like that this entire game is really cool and interesting because I feel like these give characterizations to all of the characters. So, for example, some of the members of Avalanche, and like with Jessie, for example, throughout one part of the game, I think it's after you've blown up the first reactor, she wants to go up to the plates to try and figure out why the bomb she made didn't work right, and she lies to 2 other members of Avalanche to say that she wanted to meet her mum, but instead she wanted to go and get supplies to make a new bomb to blow up the next reactor. And I feel like there's a really good characterization for people like Jessie because I feel like they go more to person, and even though what happens later in the game with Jessie, I feel like you feel a lot of emotion towards her because you've been with her throughout many parts of the game, and you feel like what's happened to her, you feel like your heart sort of break, because that's what happened to me personally to me, because this is going to be a bit of a spoiler for people who haven't played the game, because throughout part of the game, the big company thing, which I forgot the name of. Oh, Shinra. Yes, Shinra. I remember now. Shinra, who's basically the massive company who's draining the planet dry, attack part of the plate because they want to drop it on Avalanche, and members of Avalanche are trying to keep it from falling. And there's a part of it where Jessie dies because she uses the like grenade thing. And I remember when I got to that specific part, I felt like so upset because, in my opinion, I feel like Jessie's like the best character in the game, and I feel like with her, when she died, I felt so upset, and I felt like I felt like a sort of hole, like a hole where for it was like gone. It's like it was gone because it's kind of hard to explain. Because I feel like Jessie is like one of the best characters in the game, and seeing her death made me feel upset a bit. Even though I know it's a video game and it's just all fiction and stuff like that, I still felt somewhat upset over Jessie's death, and it made me like stop playing the game like for a few days because of how impactful that scene was. And yeah, it's really impactful, that death scene. It's like, So basically, sum up the game. It's really interesting. It's really cool. Even though it's a part of many other Final Fantasy VII remakes to come in the future, I still feel like this is a good introduction to people who might want to play Final Fantasy VII or other games in the Final Fantasy VII franchise. So yeah. So I highly suggest getting Final Fantasy VII Remake. It's really cool and really interesting. And that's been my review for Final Fantasy VII. I hope you enjoyed that video. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe. And I'll see you in the next video.